Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. I am Michelle Kane. My company is Voice Matters, and I am here as ever with my wonderful co host, Karen Swim of Solo PR Pro, the glue that brings us all together. Hi, Karen. How are you today?
I am not feeling so sticky today, but
That's good. That's good, though.
no boost today. But I'm great. How are you?
Hey, we made it to another month.
Yeah,
Spring is around the corner.
that's what they
Um,
tell me.
Yeah, so they say. So they say. I've seen some of my little daffodils popping up, and what does it say about me that I'm concerned for them? I'm like, ooh, maybe a little early. Be careful.
Yeah, yeah,
But they know what they're doing more than I do, so I'll just have to trust it all. Yeah, I can't complain, and we've made it to March, and wow, month 3 of the first quarter, and segueing nicely into Women's History Month. So with that, we thought we'd talk a little bit about, women in business, women and their role in public relations. I mean, it's, no secret that women make up the bulk of people who practice public relations. That's always been
yeah,
a thing, which
yeah,
is great. We might want to touch on a bit, I suppose, but are we in levels of authority as much as we should be, right?
yeah.
That's an ongoing issue, but it's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
It's really interesting that, first of all, I love that there's a Women's History Month. I love all of these months. So we're
Yeah.
coming off of Black History Month and the Women's History Month. And I think for me, what I would love to really be normalized is that while we have these months to honor different heritages, different genders, that we would do more on a daily basis
Yeah.
to just pay to be respectful and to understand the contributions of everyone. That would just be that would be amazing.
Mhm.
You're right though. While public relations is a female dominated field, I mean it is. Unfortunately, if you look at in the corporate world, if you look at the top layer, it's still very much male dominated. And that's, and I think for me, this Women's History Month going into it, one of the things that I considered was we still have so many first for
Mhm.
women. And I guess it sort of blows me away,
Yeah.
from that I've lived this many decades and we still have first for women and
Right.
we still have these it's just not we're not there yet and that just means that there's still work to do.
Agreed. Agree. Yeah, it's true. I mean, the longer I live, the more I find it just stymieing that, oh, we're still having the first this and the first
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I think it's, we're both of a similar generation where we did grow up where a lot, in some segments it was a given. And yet, not so long ago, maybe our parents' generation, life was so very different, and the fact that it's that proximity of time that it makes you think, it makes you appreciate how far we have come and get, really hungry for how far we have to go. I mean, all you have to do is watch a few episodes of Mad Men. Or
yeah,
I was reading the Vanity Fair last night. There was a little article on, the dark side of Jerry Lewis, and just the culture of Hollywood at that time. This one woman was saying, yes, I was, starting my acting career at the studio, and they put us all on a bus, and we thought it was going to be for a work event, and here we were just the candy, you know,
mm,
favors for these men in the industry. And you think, what? That's ridiculous. That wasn't that long ago. So, but back to
mm.
PR.
That's really, the Jerry Lewis thing brings up a really good point for us women. And Chip, thank you so much for bringing up that survey. It's interesting because I was really saddened by that. I was a Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin fan growing
Yeah,
up, watching those old movies that predated, me, but I thought
right.
they were, fine. And I'm almost sometimes afraid to look back at old movies because not all of them have held up well as we have
Right.
come to learn more and as our culture has shifted. It's it's incredible to me some of the things that we let slide.
Yeah.
Even as recently as Seinfeld, which isn't so
Yeah.
recent now, but it's amazing how you look at it through a different lens. But
Right.
I think that in some ways, particularly for communicators, one of our challenges in this particular season of our lives is how we communicate about all of these issues and how we communicate to our audiences.
Mhm.
Perfect example, one of the headlines, this is the second day of March, second day of, Women's History Month, and we already have a scandal
Huh.
with a school that was promoting Women's History Month, and they spelled it WOMYNX. And of course, there was just backlash because WOMYN is used by certain sectors in an attempt to be more inclusive, while some people see it as just being, not the right move to make ever. And so there, as everything in the United States, it becomes, polarized based upon politics.
Mhm.
But the university took a lot of flack for their spelling of it. And
Mm.
I understand that, or we should all understand, in this time and age, we've become hypersensitive as we are trying to do better because we know better. There are some
Right.
things we know that were just wrong. And we're trying to correct those things. And along the ways to trying to correct some of those wrongs and to do better because we know better, more mistakes are made.
Right.
And so it's hard to understand if we're saying things a certain way or changing things just to change them because we're trying to fit into this new paradigm, or if it's something that actually makes sense and is respectful to, everyone. Because I think that we can't, if communications are going to be inclusive, then that doesn't mean that you promote one culture while you're isolating everyone else. And so you
Mhm.
can't talk to women while making men feel like, they're the scum of the earth. That's
Right.
not inclusivity. It really
Right.
isn't. Inclusivity is bringing people together and looking at people as human beings and having respect for the differences that we all have, the different backgrounds that we come from, the different perspectives, the different socioeconomics that we are not all at the same level. We don't all have the same kind, and not making anyone feel marginalized is, to me, the true definition of being inclusive.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that we have to, as communicators, understand that and continue to learn in these areas and continue to advocate for changes. But we also have to be aware that there's going to be missteps. You're going to make them. I'm going to make them. I have made them. We'll make them
Mhm.
again. We're all going to have some failings, and that's part of this new learning process.
It's so very true. And as communicators, we are part of our job is to be storytellers. And when we do have these special months and celebrating, women, Black history, it's, you certainly aren't, the outlook shouldn't be that we're siloing it. We're not. It's like, no, please, men, come to the campfire. Let us talk about women's history because how can you know better so you can do better? Well, you need to learn.
Yeah.
And so, the arena should both be welcoming and also just even the concept of, yeah, we all need to be around this campfire for these topics.
And,
And
I think it's important for, those that are coming behind us, little girls and little boys, to see these people. It's important to see people that look like you, that you can relate to in any
Mhm.
profession. I mean,
Yeah.
another great example is that there is a lack of male teachers these days. That
Mhm.
breaks my heart because I feel like we need genders in all of our professions. They can't just see one type of person because you need people that are relatable. And this is how you inspire kids. And not to say that a little girl can't be inspired by a male role model. They can, and vice versa. But it saddens me that all of the
Mhm.
teachers are one gender overwhelmingly. There's just a
Yeah.
shortage. Men are just not attracted to the profession. And I think the same in PR. I think it's really cool when you have men and women at the table, when you have a representation of, I should say, of genders at the table, because
Mhm.
it allows us all to be better at our jobs because we all have these different perspectives from our different experiences. I can say that as a woman in the world, I know that the way that I experience life is different than someone who is a different gender. And their experience is different from what I experience. And so you need that. And as
Mhm.
communicators, we want to tell the right story. And to tell that right story, you have to understand the sides of it.
So very true. Yeah, I mean, you can only empathize and imagine and put yourself in someone's shoes to a certain extent. You need those shoes with the person in the room to
Yeah.
really help inform it. I mean, because, there are so many things that, about other genders or other cultures and ethnicities that once you learn, oh, is that how X came to be? Now, so much more in my world makes sense. So much more of your world makes sense to me. I get it now. And I think, we all need to take the extra beat, take the time to delve into that. And even if it's not feasible, like if you're a small shop or a solo, to expand your table like that, seek out people. If you're
Yeah.
working on particular projects, put together a little, informal advisory board and just say, hey, I'm trying to put this messaging together. How does it hit with you? I mean, am I making any missteps? Are we getting everything the way we should?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'll say to women, particularly this month, because it's Women's History Month, is that we have so many wonderful women who have paved the way for us, who have been trailblazers. And I believe that so many in our audience are blazing a trail as well. I think it's really important to not just walk through the door, but hold it open for other
Mm.
people and to pass on the advice and
Yeah.
to be open to mentoring others and sharing the depth of your experience. We still have, as Chip pointed out, the PR Week survey showed some closing of the gender pay gap, but it's not erased. And during this pandemic, we have the statistics to prove that women were hardest hit by the pandemic because we are, you know, we make up the larger share of caregivers. And
Right.
so when schools are closed and there's no daycare, those issues tend to affect women more than they do men.
Right.
That's not to say that men are not caregivers, please. This is not bashing men. It's just I'm sharing what statistics have shown is
Yeah.
that it did hurt women. Women left the workforce because of these issues. And women leave the workforce to give birth. And it's tough to re-enter the workforce and even as a solo to put your business on pause and then to step back into it. And it does affect our pay. It should not. Let me be
Right.
clear on that. And that's something that I think that we as women need to continue to advocate for. We just saw the decision for the U.S. women's soccer team,
Oh,
um, where they won equal pay. I
finally.
don't understand. I get it. Some people were like, well, women's soccer is more popular. Why is it more popular? Is it because it's advertised more? Is it because it's more accessible to people? Women's sports should not be considered secondary or less than. Do they get the endorsement deals that meant, we have to take a step and say, well, why is it more popular? How
Right.
come more people watch this? It's not, sports are sports. Can we normalize that it's just as fun? I mean, and let's face it, the US women's soccer team has a better record than the men. Um,
Just saying. Just putting it out there. Yeah. Yeah, I think
yeah,
it all comes back to value. I think we've talked about this before of,
yeah,
it's not because, the old adage, um, well, it's not even so old in some circles of, well, when you hire women, they're just going to get pregnant and leave the job and blah, blah, blah. But while
yeah,
they are in that seat, in that position, are they bringing the same value?
yeah.
Yes. So, end of story. Just
And
put it
honestly,
down.
I love the companies that have gotten on board with maternity and paternity leave because
Oh,
I
yeah.
in this country, again, America specifically, that it's so unfair the way we treat parents,
Yeah,
period. Like
absolutely.
men and women, parents, period. If you have kids as a parent, you should have some leeway to be able to care for your children, to take off when a child is born or when a child is adopted into your family. These are important bonding times. It's important to the health of your child. And that shouldn't be gender based. And we shouldn't penalize people for being a parent. I think that, there's so many things wrong with our whole work system in my
Yeah.
viewpoint. But I think that this is one of the things that drives people out of the workforce.
Mhm.
And as solos, we need to, understand that while we're in a position to design our own programs, I do wish that culturally we would be supported in being able to make these decisions a little bit easier too. We make it way too hard for people like us to access the benefits and things that we need to protect ourselves and to put fences around our income. It's really kind of all up to you.
Mhm.
So yeah, we need to do better, and doing better for any class of people, in my opinion, benefits us all. If we do better by women, we do better by everyone, because I think
Exactly.
everyone can get on board that your pay shouldn't be based on your gender, your race, where you live. Believe it or not, some companies still use zip codes as a basis for your salary. Shouldn't matter. All of these stupid things need to go away, and we
Yeah.
need to lift it for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so important what you said about, taking care of parents who are taking care of children who are our future citizens. I think sometimes companies get trapped in this, "Oh, how's this quarter doing?" Instead of, "Hey, my woman in accounting who's, the chief of accounting who's out on maternity leave, she's gonna be raising maybe our next CFO." It's like, I know that's a really horrible business mind way of putting it, but you know what I mean? It's like we all want good citizens and good people, and you want everyone to be their best. So why do we make it so hard on ourselves and on each other? It's this strange little, I
Yeah.
don't know, this little psychic thing we have here in this country of must make it do we really have to surmount these challenges all the time? Let's just
It's exhausting.
It is.
And I think that part of, our collective, fatigue is that we've been overwhelmed psychically with the amount of change over the past 2 years. So
Yeah.
all of these types of issues have really been at the forefront. And while these are all good things, and that we're correcting some deficiencies and we're addressing some of the ugliness of our past actions and behaviors, it is exhausting.
Mhm.
And it's tough as a communicator. And I will say this again, even as a solo, that's why it's so important to tap into other people, because there's no way that we can know all of these things on our own. You can't keep up with the changes. If you're uncertain about how to communicate about a certain issue, ask
Mhm.
other people in your profession, ask for help. Ask people if there are resources available, because there are. There's
Right.
lots of DEI resources. PRSA has some great ones. If you go to Voices for Everyone, there's some guidebooks there that will help you, because we can't do this alone, and it really does take a village these days to communicate well. I loved what Chep called out, because this is true. And as communicators, we need to keep this in mind, is that words matter, but actions matter more. So, yes, you need to be sensitive in the way that you communicate and respectful. But this is where, and I personally had to do this, and I'm comfortable with uncomfortable conversations, but you do have to get comfortable with that. So if you
Right.
have your organizations wanting to jump in to like Black History Month and, share Martin Luther King quotes, but their entire organization is all white, you really want to stop and think about that. Are you just jumping into something because it's of the moment, because it's a trend, or do you have something meaningful to add to the conversation? What are you doing? What are you doing to make sure that women have equal access to pay, promotions, and opportunities within your organization? If you're celebrating Women's History Month and your entire C-suite is just a bunch of men, that's a problem. And I see this all the time. If
Yeah.
there are companies that they do webinars and it's always a bunch of men. Uh, Side note, I once had, there was an all women webinar panel. No one blinks if it's all men. There was an all women webinar panel, and it
Yeah.
wasn't, it's a Women's History Month, but a journalist said something really nasty to my client about it being all women. Like, he likened it to the Hallmark Channel. The
Stop
most
it.
fit this, and I promise you, this was not 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
This was not. And it was so offensive, but some people still think that. And so I think that we have to normalize these things. Like, yes, we strive for diversity, but diversity doesn't mean that every single panel, because please don't do that. Please don't just go checking boxes. You want to have the right group of experts when you're doing
Right,
events.
right.
You do want to go beyond your status quo, and that takes work from an organization. As a
It
communicator,
does.
you have to encourage your clients to do that work. Don't
Yeah.
just rely on that tight circle that they've always been in, because that's how you get locked into sameness. That's how you become Silicon Valley.
Ah, and, and if you start doing the work now, then when the opportunity comes or you have the need, you will be ready. And look at this time, this time of great change, these past 2 years of like, what's happening? Take a minute and look at this as an opportunity,
Yeah,
right? It's like, well, let's do things differently because what better time than now?
yeah,
See how you can strike out and make the changes because people will be less apt to notice or get as, disoriented or whatever that negative thing might occur if they sense a change during this time of great change. It
yeah.
can become more, oh, okay. Oh, that's really smart. All right, great. So, use this time wisely to bring these things up with your clients and see if you can
I
make
agree.
steps in these
And
directions.
I think Chip makes a great point. And by the way, we are going to ask Chip to be our guest this month, particular since we're talking about these uncertain times we're in. And I know that
Yeah.
he's going to have some great insight as we move forward, because that's kind of the theme that we're going to be addressing this month. So, Chip, we're going to email you today and set up some time. So I love that he's saying, because realistically, as solos and as small business people, and oftentimes as women, particularly if you are the primary breadwinner or the only, you have to weigh things, and there can be a financial risk to you in taking a stand on things or calling things out. But I think that we have to be bold enough to do the right thing always.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm always going to default to ethics, which is a tenet of our profession. And I certainly stand up and call out things that are not right. You can be tactful, even at the risk of losing business.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do. I'm single. My household runs because I work, period. I
Mhm.
mean, just bottom line, if it's all on me, which is a lot sometimes, but if I'm not willing to be true to who I am and true to this profession that I signed up with, and if I can't exercise ethical behavior in every single circumstance, whether or not anyone's seen, whether or not anyone knows, and whether or not it benefits me or not, then that says a lot to me about my character. And so I
Yeah.
think that, as communicators, the one thing I do know about all of us is I believe that we're strong people. And I believe that we ultimately want to do the right thing. There are certainly some bad actors, they're in every profession. Let's weed those people out though. But I particularly feel that in this audience, you want to do the right thing. And so we want to encourage you always, err on the side of rightness.
Yeah. Because you know what? There are many more of us that will have your back. I I I concur with everything you said there, Karen, because yes, as a solo, sometimes you do have to make the hard
Yeah,
decisions, and you do always want to err on the side of just doing what's right because in the end, it's never gonna let you down in the long run. It really
absolutely.
isn't. It truly is not, and, I say this to myself, I've had said this out loud, as someone who has their own shop, your credibility is everything, and once you lose that or it starts to get a little tainted, you're creating far more problems than any big fat check could sustain. I mean, unless it's so big that you can retire and buy your own island, and if that's happened with anyone, please let us know. But
Yeah.
but no, always do the right thing. But, well, we thank you for doing the right thing
Yeah.
and
And we want to
spending time
encourage
with
all of
us.
you, let the women in your life know how meaningful they are to you today. Support women.
Yeah,
If you're a man in the audience, it doesn't matter what gender you are, take a moment this month to not only offer some encouragement, but to lift up a woman that you know, or, choose to mentor someone, help women to continue to make strides because, again, it really does benefit us all. And sometimes, being the unsung hero can get a little exhausting. So
a
let's,
little bit.
reach out this month, make Women's History Month an excuse to make some forward moves, to advocate for women around you, and to be part of the solution. And you know what? The beautiful thing about all of this is that it doesn't have to be this big public thing. You don't have to live your whole life on social media. It can be a private gesture. But we just encourage you to think about women this month and honor the people that are in your life and, maybe reach out to somebody that you don't know and make a connection.
Agree, agree. And as always, we thank you so much for spending your time with us. Until next time, thanks for listening to That Solo Life.